Tomorrow is the final day for candidates to enter the federal Liberal leadership race. Former Liberal MP for Brampton, Dhalla, is the latest candidate to plan to launch her campaign. She's joining us this morning in studio. So you're planning to do the registration, pay the fees today?
Yes.
But you're coming on our show first.
Yes, we are. We're here.
Okay, question number one is, why are you deciding to run? This is a really full race. You are up against some really big names and top contenders, including former Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney, former Finance Minister, Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland, former Government House Leader Karina Gold, among others. What do you bring to this race that isn't there already?
I think I'm going to be bringing something to this race that the other candidates are not. I think it is incredibly important, for the party and our great country of Canada to have the voices of diversity. It is incredibly important to have someone who has actually run a business that has started from the grassroots and from the ground up, to where it is today. And it is important to have someone who's going to stand up and fight for Canadians. I'm not entering the race because I need a job. I'm doing this because we have to ensure that we represent all Canadians, whether they are working class, whether they are business owners, whether they are young entrepreneurs. And we also need to ensure that we get the respect that Canada deserves at the international stage back. And I will stand up and I will fight for all Canadians.
Do you think that that's missing?
I definitely do. I think that it is incredibly important that, we bring Canada's stature back on the world stage. It's really about creating more jobs for our country. It's about increasing trade. And it's also about ensuring that we start boosting our economy.
You were just telling me that you were down in Washington. You were there for the inauguration. You watched it from the Canadian Embassy. You had some interesting conversations, including one with Secretary of State Marco Rubio. What did you talk about? Yes,
I actually met Marco Rubio at one of the inaugural events that we had. And when I met him, I was telling him about the importance of the Canada and the U.S. relationship, that we were going to fight to protect jobs, that we should work collaboratively. And I think I also, found it very important to have those dialogues with someone like him. And I actually also met Mark Zuckerberg, was the owner of Facebook.
Oh,
and
what did you ask him?
So we actually were talking about the inauguration, and I was telling him about the political environment, and he said, "Oh, which party are you from?" And I said, "The Liberal Party." Then he said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "I'm here to save Canada." And I think
what did he respond?
He just kind of chuckled, and I said, "Listen," I said, "we need to get this relationship back on track."
Yeah.
And he didn't engage any further, but I think it's important, that we have Canadian representatives having these dialogues. It's an opportunity to educate. It's an opportunity for them to understand that we as Canadians are going to ensure we do everything possible to protect Canadian jobs and the Canadian economy.
Really quick question, which I didn't get a chance to ask you. When you had a conversation with Marco Rubio, you said what you said to him. What did he say back to you?
He wanted to, I actually invited him to come to Canada, and I spoke to him about him being from the state of Florida and the impact that any type of tariffs would have, for his constituents, whether it's in regards to the orange juice that's produced in Florida or a state like California, where Doug Ford has gone out and said that we will remove, wines that are being produced from the U.S. if the tariffs are implemented. I did speak to him about that as well, and he said this is a very serious issue and I will be looking into it. So I think having that dialogue once again is incredibly important, because out of sight is out of mind.
Okay. The federal cabinet just wrapped up their retreat in Quebec. As you know, they were planning Canada's response to the planned tariffs that are coming, could be as soon as February 1st. Whoever wins this Liberal leadership race, and that will be decided March 9th, will be the next prime minister. They will also be the front lines of this fight against the tariffs. So how would you handle Trump tariffs?
I would deal with it with a velvet glove and an iron fist.
What does that mean?
I think it's very important to be a very strong negotiator. It is incredibly important to have leadership on the file and to not be pushed around. But I also think at the same time, it's important to have a collaborative and a cooperative approach. I bring it, to the analogy of when a husband and wife are having a screaming or a shouting match, and if both of them are shouting and screaming, the situation never gets resolved. But I think it's during calmer, environments and calmer minds, when the temperature is lowered, that you can actually achieve some sort of resolution.
So do you then agree with retaliatory measures or a more conciliatory approach, which is what Danielle Smith seems to be bringing to the
I think you need to have a combination of both. I think that
what does that look like specifically?
If they do come in with, if they do come in with the tariffs, as they have been saying, Trump did not mention it during his speech, but if they do, the retaliatory measures that Doug Ford has imposed, of taking, as an example, the wines off the shelves so that the U.S. can actually feel the impact, I think is the right way to go. The conciliatory approach that Danielle Smith has spoken about, I think is also important. And that's where I think it's important to have that velvet glove and the iron fist, to be very strong, to be very firm, that we are not going to be pushed around as a country. We are not going to be pushed around as Canadians. And when I was there at the inauguration, I was telling every representative that I met that this is no longer a joke. This is serious business, because people's lives are going to be affected on both sides of the border. And each of us working together, can continue to even grow our economies even further and create greater superpowers in the world.
All right. Well, the deadline is tomorrow. You were planning to get your registration fees in as of today. Thank you for coming on, Ruby Dhalla. Good to have you here. Best of luck as you throw your hat in the ring.
I hope that we're going to make history and create history as one of, the first woman of Indian origin that will be elected as Prime Minister of Canada. We're excited, we're ready to go, and we look forward to this race.
Ruby Dhalla, thanks so much for coming. If you liked that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.